Here we're going to talk about adding and subtracting negative numbers. First we're going to start with just subtracting numbers which give you negative numbers. So here's your standard number line, and we're all pretty used to thinking on the positive end of this. For example, if we're at 1 and we add 3, 1, 2, 3, we have 4. So 1 plus 3 equals 4. If we are at 1, but we're going to subtract 3. When you subtract, you go to the left-hand side. So if we have 1 minus 3, we're just going to go to the left. 1, 2, 3. And we're at negative 2. Similarly, if we are at 3 and we subtract 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we end up at negative 4. So that's mechanically how you can think of it, but obviously when we get into large numbers, we're not going to be drawing out a number line and then physically counting back. So the key is to look at the relationship between these two numbers. So if you have a number and you're subtracting something that's larger than it, so 3 is larger than 1, if you look at this relationship, 3 minus 1 is 2. Here the answer was negative 2. 7 minus 3 is 4. Here the answer was negative 4. So how you can think of this is if this number is, what you're subtracting is larger, you just swap them out and add a negative sign to it. So if we try this for larger numbers, for example, let's do 32 minus 67. Well, the way that we can think of that is 67 minus 32. If we do that subtraction, we get 35. Well, so the answer to 32 minus 67 is going to be negative 35. Make sure you add the negative on there. And that makes sense, because if we're out at 32 and go all the way back 67, we're going to end up at a negative number. And so this works for, essentially any size number you want. 1,297 minus 42,315. So the way, again, we think about this is 42,315 minus 1,297. And with this we get 41,018. So the answer to this is negative 41,018. So that's how you can subtract a number that's larger than what you're subtracting from. Now, when you're subtracting, you honestly can think of this as adding a negative number. So for example, 1 minus 3 is really 1 plus negative 3. So when you're doing negative numbers and subtracting, for example, negative 1 minus 3, you're here, 1, 2, 3, so it's going to be negative 4, but you can think of that, that's kind of hard to think of written like that. You can think of negative 1 plus negative 3. When you're adding two negative numbers, you just add them up and put a negative sign in front of it. So you have two negative numbers that you're adding. So it's just 1 plus 3 is 4, but you're going to put a negative sign in front of it. Same thing if we do larger numbers. For example, negative 32 minus 67 is the same thing as negative 32 plus negative 67. So we add these two up. 32 plus 67 is 99, and we put a negative sign in front of it. So it's negative 99. Now, one last thing that I want to tell you is if you are subtracting a negative number, you're going to add. So 1 minus negative 3. You may have heard of two negatives make a positive. So 1 minus negative 3 is the same thing as 1 plus 3, which obviously we know is 4. Let's say we had negative 1 minus negative 3. Anytime you have two negatives, you're going to make it a positive. So here we're going to have negative 1 plus 3. So we negative 1, 1, 2, 3. So we know the answer is going to be 2. How you can think about this in the way that we just did it is when you're adding, it doesn't matter which order you put the two numbers in. So you can make this 3 minus 1 or 3 plus negative 1. So we know the answer is 2.